Imagine stepping into a dark, ancient mine shaft, a place where, the earth yielded its treasures. But this wasn't just a quarry. It was also a profound, kind of mysterious burial site.
Yeah, really mysterious. We're talking about human remains, thousands of years old, hidden deep underground, and they reveal a story that's, well, completely unexpected, utterly captivating.
It really is a discovery that seems to challenge so many of our long-held ideas about prehistoric life.
Exactly, especially the roles people played back then and maybe the rituals around death.
Absolutely. So today we're taking a deep dive into some truly remarkable findings. These come from the Krumlov Forest in Czechia. Specifically, we'll be unpacking the human remains found in a prehistoric chert mine. And we're focusing on two women whose lives, and even their unique burial, sort of rewrite what we thought we knew about ancient labor and ritual.
And for this, we're drawing heavily on a very recent, really comprehensive study. It was published in Archaeological and Anthropological Sciences by Dr. Eva Vaníčková and her colleagues. Our mission, really, is to understand the incredible story these individuals tell us, what their bones reveal about their day-to-day lives, their hardships, and the surprising cultural context that led to them being buried deep inside the earth.
Okay, so to really get this story, we need to set the scene a bit. We're heading to the Krumlov Forest, that's in southern Moravia, Czechia.
And this place, it's huge. It holds Europe's largest known prehistoric chert mining fields. Just massive.
Wow. And what's really remarkable is how long this went on for, right?
Oh, yeah, the longevity is incredible. Chert mining happened here basically continuously from the very beginning of the Holocene, that's, roughly 10,000 years ago,
10,000.
all the way up until the early Iron Age, the Hallstatt period. So it's a place with this incredibly deep, long-running tradition.
So maybe for people who aren't familiar, what exactly is chert?
Right, good question. Chert, or silicite isanto, it's basically a type of hard, fine-grained rock, silicon dioxide. And in prehistoric times, it was absolutely vital. It was the go-to raw material for crafting stone tools, arrowheads, weapons, that kind of thing. Think of it like the high-tech material of its day.
Gotcha. Like steel before steel.
Pretty much. And the mining techniques they used were surprisingly sophisticated for the time. We're talking wide shaft, some going down as deep as 8 meters.
That's deep. About 26 feet straight down.
Yeah. And they also used horizontal undercuts, kind of digging into slopes, plus widely lowered pits, sometimes with undercut walls on flat ground. And it seems probable they even dug small tunnels branching off from these pits.
Okay, so this is where the story really gets compelling. The main discovery we're talking about today came from one specific shaft, shaft number 4.
That's the one.
This is where archaeologists found the remains of 3 people, 2 adults and 1 newborn.
And what makes this so significant, besides just being a mine burial, is that along with another find, the Mauer burial in Vienna, these are the oldest known European mine graves ever found, period.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And the team that studied them, Dr. Vaníčková's team, they used a whole range of methods, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. A truly multidisciplinary approach. They used all sorts of scientific techniques to analyze everything: their age, sex, health, what they ate, any family connections, even where they originally came from geographically.
Wow.
And they even did these painstaking facial reconstructions. So we actually get a vivid glimpse of who these people might have actually looked like.
Amazing. Okay, let's peel back those layers then. Let's explore the lives of these 2 women. Who were they, according to the bones?
Well, the adult remains, they're designated H12002 and H2A 2002. Both were definitely confirmed as female.
Okay.
And age-wise, H1 was estimated to be between 30 and 35 when she died. H2A was a bit older, maybe 35 to 40.
And they were related.
That's what's really striking. The DNA evidence, it showed they shared identical alleles and mitochondrial DNA.
Meaning?
Well, those are specific genetic markers. Finding them identical strongly suggests they were closely related, quite possibly sisters.
Sisters. Wow. That adds such a human element to it all.
Doesn't it? Physically, they were both pretty short for the time. H1 was around 148 centimeters, so like 4'10". H2A was even shorter, about 146 centimeters, 4'9".
Quite small.
Yeah, and the researchers noted they were slender, with moderately developed muscles, which, as we'll get into, seems quite remarkable given what they found about their underlying frail body constitution.
And you mentioned the facial reconstructions.
Yes. Thanks to all that work, we can actually visualize them. The reconstruction suggests H1 probably had hazel or green eyes and darker hair. H2A, on the other hand, had a really high chance, like over 90% of having blue eyes and likely fair hair.
Wow.
These hyper-realistic busts, they're actually in a museum now. It literally brings these ancient women to life for us today.
But despite those, striking individual details, their bones tell a much tougher story. A story of hardship that started really early.
Yeah, sadly, yes. There's clear evidence of significant stress in their childhoods. Both women's shin bones, their tibiae, showed Harris lines. They're essentially growth arrest lines. They form when bone growth temporarily stops, usually because of illness or really severe nutritional stress when you're growing up.
Okay.
And H2A also had something called linear enamel hypoplasia on her teeth. These are like little grooves or pits in the tooth enamel that form when enamel development gets disrupted. It's another clear sign of some kind of non-specific stress during childhood.
So basically they had a rough start.
Very rough. The research summary puts it bluntly. They were weak, diseased, and poorly fed during their childhood.
Jeez. So they faced these big struggles early on. What about their adult lives? What did their bodies show about the physical demands they faced?
Well, their bones provide really stark evidence of incredible physical labor, just brutal. Their vertebrae, their backbones, showed clear degenerative changes.
Like what?
Osteophytes, those are bone spurs. Schmorl's nodes, which indicate where parts of the spinal disc have actually planted into the bone itself. Hyperkyphosis, which is that abnormal forward curve of the spine. And just general erosion of the vertebrae.
And that's unusual for their age.
Very unusual. These are conditions you typically see in people maybe over 40, sometimes much older, yet these women were younger. It points to enormous, just crushing strain on their spines.
Wow.
These weren't just, signs of getting older. This was clear evidence that these women pushed their bodies incredibly hard, maybe even past their breaking point.
That paints such a brutal picture of what their daily life must have been like.
It really does. And furthermore, they had very marked muscle attachments, particularly this prominent groove on their thigh bones, their femurs, right where the gluteus maximus muscle attaches.
What does that tell us?
It indicates tremendous strain on that big buttock muscle, for instance, from repeatedly getting up from a sitting or squatting position, which is totally consistent with working underground in mines.
Right.
So these findings strongly suggest they work hunched over in these intensely forward-bent positions, very likely in narrow, cramped underground mine shafts.
And didn't one of them have a serious injury too?
Yes, and this is just heartbreaking. H2A, the slightly older one, she had a poorly healed fracture of her left ulna. That's one of the two forearm bones.
Okay.
It was the kind of break often called a perifracture, maybe suggesting a defensive injury at some point. But the really sad part is it formed a pseudoarthrosis. Meaning it created a false joint. It never healed properly, it wasn't fixed. And the implication drawn by the researchers is stark. She had to work, regardless of her injury.
Oh my God. Imagine facing that kind of physical work day in, day out, with a broken arm that never healed right.
It really speaks volumes about the necessity, or maybe the compulsion that was driving their labor, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Beyond these physical tolls, though, the isotope analysis gave some fascinating insights, too, about their diet and where they lived.
What did that show?
Well, first, we know they were locals. They lived in or very near the Krumlov Forest area their whole lives.
Okay, so they weren't brought in from somewhere else.
Exactly. And their diet. That revealed another really intriguing detail. The source says they mostly ate C3 plants, think things like wheat or barley, which was pretty typical for Neolithic farmers in that area. But here's the surprise. They had a surprisingly high proportion of animal protein in their diets compared to other Neolithic groups nearby. The only exception found was way up in Denmark.
Huh. That is interesting. Why would that be?
That's the big question. The researchers speculate a bit. Maybe they were deliberately given more meat to keep them strong enough for the intense mining work, like fueling their bodies for the job.
Makes sense.
Or maybe it came from hunting wild game, which would have been plentiful in the forest. Either way, it suggests a unique dietary thing going on, whether by choice or necessity, linked directly to their really hard labor.
We should probably quickly touch on a few other health details the study found, just to round out the picture.
Sure. They generally had good teeth, surprisingly, but there were signs of gum disease, periodontal disease, and H1 had some extra teeth, what they call retained supernumerary teeth. Both women also had something called tympanic dehiscence. It's a small opening in the bone near the ear. Apparently, it's a common developmental thing. Usually doesn't cause problems.
Right.
H1 also had an underdeveloped frontal sinus hypoplasia and something called bilateral spondylosis. That's basically a stress fracture in the lower spine, very likely from all that spinal overloading from the work.
Oof.
And H2A even had a benign bone growth, an osteoma on her skull. These smaller details just add layers to the incredibly complete picture we're getting of their lives.
So we have these two incredibly hardworking women, possibly sisters, living lives of intense physical strain buried deep inside a mine.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a third person found with them, this enigmatic newborn.
Yes, the newborn child.
Yeah.
Designated H2B 2002, found right there alongside the two females. It was a full-term newborn, estimated to be between 38 and 40 weeks of intrauterine life, so born right around the due date.
But here's the baffling part, isn't it? The real mystery, the DNA.
Exactly. The DNA evidence showed the newborn was not related to either of the women.
It's not related at all?
Nope. 5 of the baby's genetic markers, the alleles, were different from H1 and H2As. This isn't just some small detail. It completely reshapes how we have to think about this burial.
How so?
Well, it suggests maybe a non-kinship ritual, or perhaps some kind of collective tragedy, or maybe a different kind of social bond that just doesn't fit our modern expectations of family burial.
Wow.
Precisely. The reason this unrelated newborn was buried with these 2 women, it remains totally unknown. People speculate the child might have died around the same time, but that non-kin connection just deepens the mystery of this unique triple burial.
This really brings up that bigger, more profound question, doesn't it? Why were these women buried in the mine shaft in the first place? And why pour so much effort into mining chert if, like the study suggests, its practical value was actually minimal?
Right. Especially since you could often just find chert lying around on the surface. This is where the practical and the symbolic seem to really diverge in a fascinating way.
So what's the thinking there?
Well, the researchers propose that the chert dug from deep underground wasn't often used for everyday tools. Instead, it was used for objects of prestige. Think elaborate axes, long, beautiful blades, daggers, things that were then often placed into ritual deposits. Hoards, basically.
Ah, okay. So it wasn't just about making functional tools.
Seems not. It suggests the mining of this deep chert went way beyond just practical needs for utilitarian stuff.
So it was about something more. Ceremonial, spiritual maybe? What do the researchers think the real value was?
Dr. Vaníčková and her colleagues, they suggest that this stone, pulled from the very depths of the earth, might have been linked with an ancestral legacy.
Ancestral legacy, meaning?
Meaning its value became deeply subjective, symbolic. Perhaps they saw the whole mining process as sacred work, a way to forge a direct physical link between the living world and the underground world of the ancestors.
Wow, okay, so it transforms mining from just labor into a kind of spiritual act.
That seems to be the idea. It makes the mine itself a sort of sacred space.
So, if the mine was seen as this bridge to the ancestral world, does that mean these burials weren't just tragic accidents or disposals, but maybe intentional acts of reverence?
That's a very compelling interpretation.
Could that explain this idea that anything reminiscent of the miners' activities is returned to the earth, sometimes including the miners themselves?
It could indeed. This theory might explain why these women, who were directly involved in this potentially sacred work, were then interred back in the shaft, especially since we know the shaft was apparently open for some time after their deaths. It suggests a deep symbolic connection, a return to the very earth that maybe sustained both their spiritual and physical lives.
Which brings us back to a really challenging question about why they were doing this work. Were they forced into this incredibly demanding labor, or were they, voluntary participants?
Right, and here's where we get into a really provocative theory the researchers put forward. They suggest that with the rise of the social role of males in the Eneolithic,
That's the period, roughly 4,500 to 3,500 BC, associated with big societal shifts, maybe early patriarchy.
Exactly. They suggest that maybe during this time, the whole dynamic of labor might have shifted dramatically. Perhaps, they propose, the hardest, most grueling work wasn't necessarily done by the strongest people anymore, but maybe by those who could most easily be forced to do it.
Oof.
So the question they raise is, could the brutal reality of these women's lives in the mines be stark early proof of this kind of evolving, perhaps more coercive social structure?
That's a powerful and pretty unsettling thought. Are there alternatives, though? Could there be another reason these women specifically were doing this?
Absolutely. There's an alternative perspective. Remember we talked about their smaller stature.
Yeah, they were quite short.
Well, maybe that small size was actually an advantage in the narrow underground spaces of the mines. Perhaps their physical build made them uniquely suited to maneuvering in those really tight, constricted environments.
Ah, so maybe it was specialized work they were suited for.
It's possible. It could make their work voluntary, even specialized. But honestly, Many questions remain. Was it voluntary? Were they forced? The evidence, as it stands, seems to allow for both interpretations. It just underscores how complex these ancient societies probably were.
It's really clear that these Krumlov Forest individuals, they still hold more secrets. The study points out that the DNA is really well preserved, and so are samples from their teeth, dental calculus.
Yeah, and that material is excellent for further, more demanding molecular analyses. We're talking modern techniques like next-generation sequencing NGS, which lets you read whole genomes really fast, genomics, studying the whole set of genes, and even metaproteomics, which looks at all the proteins in a sample.
So there's potentially a lot more to learn.
Definitely. These individuals have not yet revealed everything about themselves. Future research really promises to uncover even more about their lives, their health, the world they lived in, maybe even finer details about their daily lives and their community's practices.
So as we wrap up this deep dive then, we've explored these extraordinary lives of two prehistoric women from the Krumlov Forest. It's a story of immense physical labor, unexpected family ties, really profound childhood hardship, and this surprisingly deep, maybe even sacred, connection to the earth they mined.
And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Considering the sheer amount of work involved in digging these deep chert mines, the fact that the material wasn't always strictly necessary for survival tools, and the intense physical toll it took on these women. What does that tell you, the listener, about the power of belief, maybe? Or ritual? Or even those evolving societal structures and driving what people do, even when facing incredible hardship? What compels people to push their bodies to such limits for something that wasn't purely about survival day to day?